All right, peace, family. So I was thinking about Mansa Musa, who historians say was the richest man in the history of the world. Some estimate his wealth at about 400 billion. I've heard estimates as high as in the trillions. And even some people have said that his wealth cannot be estimated. It was so much that it could not be estimated. All right. And I was thinking about him, and I was thinking about what he said and how he came to the throne. So in Mansa Musa's own words, he said that he inherited the throne after Mansa Abubakari Keita II left the throne to explore the Atlantic Ocean. When Mansa Abubakari Keita II left the throne to explore the Atlantic Ocean, he sent 2,200 ships stocked with gold, a number of servants, a number of food and provisions, minerals, to last for several years for the journey. 2,200 ships full of wealth and supplies and resources. And it was after Mansa Abubakari Keita II left the throne that Mansa Musa became king. So the question I asked myself, I said, okay, if Mansa Musa was the richest, most wealthiest person in the history of the world, estimated at 400 billion, and we're going to just use 400 billion because we need a number to work with, right? My question is, how much of that 400 billion did he earn by himself and how much was inherited, right? Then another question, is it possible that Mansa Abubakari Keita II was wealthier than Mansa Musa, considering that what Mansa Musa inherited was what was left over, right, after Mansa Abubakari Keita II spent resources building 2,200 ships and then stocking those ships full of food, provisions, gold, servants, etc. for several years before embarking to explore the Atlantic Ocean. Is it possible that Mansa Abubakari Keita II was richer and wealthier than Mansa Musa? Now, historians say that the way Mansa Musa obtained his wealth was he secured several trade routes, which made him wealthier. So as far as I understand, Mansa Abubakari Keita II did not have access to those trade routes that Mansa Musa had. So, okay, it's more than likely that Mansa Musa was wealthier than Mansa Abubakari Keita II because of those trade routes. But of the 400 billion, how much of that was inherited and how much of that was earned on his own, right? That's the question. So I just wanted to throw that out there for people to think about and debate in the comments, just interested in hearing people's feedback and thoughts about that. But another thing, right? So let's talk about Mansa Abubakari Keita II and his exploration to the New World, right? Let's say that Mansa Musa was wealthier than Mansa Abubakari Keita II, and of the 400 billion, Mansa Musa inherited half of it, right? So we're going to be fair. We're going to say Mansa Musa inherited 200 billion and he made the other 200 billion on his own, right? What might be more realistic is he inherited 300 billion and he earned 100 billion on his own. At the very least, Mansa Abubakari Keita II could have been worth 200 billion. If Mansa Musa was worth 400 billion, then Mansa Abubakari Keita II could have been worth 200 billion. He could have been worth 300 billion, right? But whether Mansa Abubakari Keita II was worth 200 billion or 300 billion or 350 billion, right? That still would have made Mansa Abubakari Keita II one of the wealthiest men to ever live in the history of the world. Now, why is that important? Because when it comes to Mansa Abubakari Keita II's exploration of the Atlantic Ocean and whether or not they even departed the coast of Africa, there are historians who are skeptical about if he even departed, if he even left, if it even happened, right? But when you put into context that was an exploration that was commissioned by one of the wealthiest men in the history of the world, then it becomes more likely. It becomes even more likely that they did set out to explore the Atlantic Ocean, right? The other part of Mansa Abubakari Keita II's exploration of the Atlantic Ocean that people are skeptical of is if they ever arrived in the Americas, either North America or South America. And a lot of historians say that it's not likely. So let's just do some quick math to calculate the probability of if any of the 2,200 ships that were part of Mansa Abubakari Keita II's exploration made it to the Americas, made it to the New World, okay? So if he had he sent 2,200 ships. So that means if just 1% of the ships arrived in the New World, if just 1% arrived to the New World, that would have been 22 ships with all the people and provisions that were on 22 ships, right? If 5% of the ships that he set out in his exploration arrived to the New World, that would have been over 100 ships. Over 100 ships. If just 5% made it, that would have been over 100 ships that made it to the New World with all the provisions and resources and people that were on those 100 ships. If just 5% made it. So, given the sheer volume of ships and people and resources that Mansa Abubakari Keita II sent in his exploration of the Atlantic Ocean, given the sheer volume, it's actually more likely that one ship arrived to the New World than saying none of them arrived. It's actually more likely, it's more probable, because he sent so many ships, right? When you hear the story of Mansa Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca, pilgrimage to the east on Hajj, and how lavish it was, and how he traveled with all these resources on all these people, right? Just think about Mansa Abubakari Keita II's exploration of the Atlantic Ocean. Just think about how Mansa Musa traveled east. It probably was very similar to how Mansa Abubakari Keita II traveled west, right? So when we take all of these things into consideration, and you talk about Mansa Abubakari Keita II's exploration of the Atlantic Ocean, considering that he was one of the wealthiest men in the history of the world, not only is it possible that he had the resources to send out 2,200 ships to explore the Atlantic Ocean, but it's also highly probable, highly likely that some of those ships arrived in the New World. It's actually something that is testable. If you just took 2,200 logs, just 2,200 logs, and just put them in the ocean, put them in the water off the coast of Africa, and see how many make it, how many make it to the New World, right? And it's just a log, so there's no intelligence to steal the log or to make sure that it gets to its destination. But just put 2,200 logs in the ocean off the coast of Africa and let the currents take them and see how many make it to the New World. That's a testable experiment, right? And then when you consider that you have intelligent people steering those ships, it becomes more probable and more likely, right? So this whole video was just stream of consciousness and thought. That's all for me, man. I love to hear people's thoughts and opinions in the comments. Yep, that's it for me. All right, peace.